We've got the transmission laid out in front of me on the table. This can be a sticking point for many people, including myself, but not to worry. I just spent a lot of time laying everything out, making sure it's easy to describe so you guys can throw your transmissions back together without a hitch. Now, in terms of assembling the shafts here, we got the counter shaft, which is where the sprocket goes. So you can see the sprocket goes right on this side here. And the main shaft here is actually what the clutch assembles to. You see, I've got all the gears laid out on the counter shaft. First is the biggest, and actually fifth and third are the smallest gears, but normally fifth is supposed to be the smallest amount of teeth on the counter shaft. And the main shaft here, the small gear here is first gear, and then the largest gear on the main shaft is fifth gear, and I've got everything labeled out for you. Now, I'll start with the counter shaft first, since there's kind of two components of assembling it. You've got this left side here, and you've got the right side. So all the gears right now are face down on the table. When I assemble them onto the shaft, I'm going to take them from face down and assemble them on the shaft just like that. So if you have any questions, I'm going to take a picture for you and you guys can screenshot this picture to make sure everything is lined up correctly. So on the counter shaft here, fourth is going to go on first, followed by second gear, and then third, fifth, and first gear, they're going to get assembled onto the counter shaft from the right side. So third is face down right now. It's going to be assembled up just like that. Now, some fun facts actually about these circlips. So these are called stamped circlips. They're actually installed a certain way. There's a rounded side and a sharp side. So the rounded side of the circlip is supposed to be installed towards the direction of thrust. So on this counter shaft here, the direction of thrust is going to be going to the right. So we need to install the curved side towards the direction of thrust. Now, the reason that is, if I flip over third gear here, you'll notice how there's a flat side to the end of the gear. You always want the curved side of the circlips to go against the flat side of the gears. Reason being, if it was the opposite and the sharp side or the flat side was installed against the gear, that's more surface area for the gear to rub against the circlip. So there's a little bit more friction there. And then again, if we look at the shaft itself, since the circlip is basically going to be thrusted to the right by the gear, you want the flat side to be in the groove, because if the curved side was in the groove and it was being thrusted this way, the circlip could more easily roll over the slot in the shaft. So another reason why we want the flat side installed the opposite way of the thrust, because it's harder to jump that gap in the slot. So I've got all the circlips actually facing down as well. So the curved side is facing up, because that's going to go on the shaft face down. Curved side is going to face to the left. And then with the main shaft here, all the flat sides are facing down, all the curved sides are facing up. So the curved side is going to face to the right, and then the flat side is going to face to the left, because the direction of thrust on the main shaft is going to the left. And you'll notice that on each side there's a flat side of the gear here. So flat side gear, curved side of the circlip. This is a flat side of the gear, so curved side of the circlip. And then if I flip over this one again, flat side of the gear, curved side of the circlip. And then in terms of the shift forks here, we got the smallest shift fork, and it's actually labeled number 2 on the top. This is gonna go on the left side or the main shaft, along with the smaller shift fork pin. So this is actually called shift fork A. Shift fork C is going to be the one that has the large hook here, and this little notch is going to point towards the shift drum, because it's going to go in that slot there, and the number is going to be facing down. And then this is going to be actually called shift fork B, so it's got the lettering numbering 249 on top. So that lettering is going to face up. This little pin is going to face to the left to go into the shift drum again. So let's get it all assembled right now. I have to say thank you to Millennium Technologies. When I took the bike apart, I sent the transmission to them to get isotropic micro polished. Now basically what this is they just polish the shafts and the gears to make it super smooth. It not only results in just buttery smooth shifting, but the idea behind it is to reduce the friction. And when you reduce friction in the transmission, you're ultimately reducing the heat, the amount of heat that your engine is producing. So when your engine is running cooler and doesn't overheat, your engine's actually able to perform at its max capacity for longer periods of time. So that is one of the main benefits of the isotropic micro polishing. The people who have gotten this done and who have told me about it, they're like, once you get this done to your bike, you're not going to want to ride a bike without the micro polish done to it. So thanks to Millennium Technologies. So we'll start with the counter shaft first and put third gear on. So the dog holes are going to face to the left. followed by the circlip here. So curved side is going to face to the left. So with these circlips, there's a little slot in the circlip that you got to line up. And let me tell you guys, there's really no easy way to get these things on. These circlips are replacement parts. So you want to make sure every time you rebuild the transmission that you do replace these circlips. I got all these OEM from Rocky Mountain ATV-MC, and don't worry, they have plenty in stock. Then you've got fifth gear here. So the slot for the shift forks is going to slide into the left. And then you've got first gear here. This is actually marked with a little J on the inside. And the slide that's slotted J is going to go to the left. So the dogs in fifth gear can slide into the dog holes in first gear. And then you've got this needle bearing here that's going to slide right onto the end of the shaft. And then you got this final circlip here that's going to go onto that inside slot right there. Again, the curved side is going to face to the left and the flat side is going to face to the right. Then the other side of the counter shaft, you've got fourth gear. So the dogs are going to go on the shaft facing to the right. And then second gear, the dog holes are going to go facing the right as well. And then also on this counter shaft, there's this collar, so the lip is going to face out, and that's going to go on the shaft into the slot of second gear. And then you have the counter shaft assembly. Okay, so next up we've got the main shaft, and again, fifth gear is facing down. The dog holes are going to face to the left, and that's going to be followed by a circlip. The curved side is going to face to the right. I actually got to flip it around because I can't do the circlip pliers with my left hand. So I'm not gonna lie, these things are a pain in the butt. So when you're doing it, you kind of put your thumb into the circlip on the shaft, kind of hold your thumb there and use the circlip pliers to get it up and over. That's the best way that I can get these things on. I mean, I just spent the last 5 minutes off camera trying to get it on for you guys. And once it's on the shaft, kind of guide it down with your fingers and the circlip pliers as well. And that should snap into place. So I'm going to flip this back around. So if you get confused, the threads are always going to point to the right. Now third gear is face down. I'm going to flip it up and put that onto the splines. So the dogs on third gear are going to go into the dog holes on fifth gear. And then we got a lovely circlip up next. Again, curved side is always going to face toward the gears. And just like the other one, make sure it snaps into place. Then again, threads to the right, fourth gear is face down. The dog holes are gonna face right to the dogs. And then we've got one final circlip. Curved side on the circlip is gonna face to the right. Now that one went on the easiest. Again, with the circlip, you just wanna make sure it's completely seated in the slot around all the splines. You want to see the splines catching on the circlip there. And then finally, threads to the right, second gear is going to come up and just rest on the shaft, just like that. So the shafts are now going to go together like this. So first to first, fifth to fifth, third to third, fourth to fourth, second to second. Now what I'm going to do is the manual does say make sure the gears are well oiled when you put them in. I'm going to take my Maxima assembly lube and just squirt some assembly lube into each of the sections of the gears. Make sure there's plenty of lube in there to go around. Don't be shy with it. And then especially with the shift forks here, you want to put it in the shift fork slots as well as on the shift fork ears. I'm going to show that to you guys in a second, but I mean, ideally you're going to put engine oil in this thing before you start it, so it's not going to be a complete cold start. But again, don't be shy with the assembly lube because every little bit can help. And then here with the ears of the shift forks, make sure you put some assembly lube on those because they will need some help with the cold start. Do the same thing with the counter shaft here. And then again, don't forget the slots where the shift fork ears go. And I'm also going to put some assembly lube on the shift fork pins. And then on the shift drum itself, especially in the slots where the shift pins go on the shift forks. And then again, don't be shy with the assembly lube. I'm going to put it on the inside of the inner races to make sure those slide in nice and easy. So you're going to put the transmission in as one here. So put the counter shaft in your right hand. Again, this is where the sprocket goes. And then the main shaft in your left hand. Line up all the gears. And then what you can do is just insert the transmission into the engine at the very same time. And you see how the gears are actually stopping. That's perfectly normal. Now we need to get the shift forks in there, the pins, and the drum. So I actually threw the engine on some blocks, so it was a little bit easier for you guys to see. We're gonna get the shift forks installed. So number 2 here is gonna be on the left side. The pin is gonna be facing to the right, and it's gonna go in the slot right there and kind of move that out of the way. Next up, we'll install shift fork C, the one with the big claw hook, and that's going to go in the slot on the bottom. And again, just get that up and moved out of the way. And then shift fork B with lettering 249 is going to be installed in that slot right there. Again, we can move it out of the way. Next is the drum. This big end is going to be installed down into that bearing. You might need to lift up on shift fork A to drop that drum in there. It's just going to drop into that top slot of the shift drum. You'll move shift fork C all the way on the bottom into the bottom slot. You may have to lift up on it a little bit. And actually shift fork B kind of slid out on me, so I'll have to put that back in. You'll have to lift up on the gear a little bit, and then that'll slide into the top slot of the shift drum. Then with your well-lubed shift fork pins, you can drop the pins right into their slots. Again, making sure they bottom out into the slots in the cases. And then once the shift forks are in there, the transmission should spin freely as you see here. And if the transmission doesn't spin freely like this, you're gonna have to take it apart and figure out where you might have went wrong and then reassemble it with the same process. So I got the engine back in the stand, and I'm just gonna throw some more assembly lube on the gears here, and you wanna make sure that thing is moving like butter. And the isotropic micropolishing by Millennium Technologies is just making this thing move so smooth already.